pal.
Hey there, I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by Philip Lee, one of Ireland's fastest growing corporate law firms and expert advisors at the heart of the Dublin and London startup, fintech, and crypto communities. On the show this week, we got Matthew Larby, founder and CEO of Realm, a blockchain metaverse ecosystem where you can create and explore your own play-to-earn microverse. In this episode, Matthew and I talk through what is Realm, making the metaverse more accessible, his own transition from being a Web 2 founder to a Web 3 founder, building a seed round in advance of Realm's IDO, or initial decentralized exchange offering, and a little known fact about his love for competing. All right here on Money Never Sleeps. What are you drinking?
Coffee, latte.
Lovely.
Yeah, exactly.
And where are you today?
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, when you and I first chatted, Matt, you were on your way back from somewhere warm.
Yeah, I think we've been at Art Basel in Miami, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thanks.
And then you were returning to London, were you?
Yeah,
Or was that New York?
UK, yeah.
All right, cool. All right. Well, listen. Well, why don't we hop right into it? And the best way to get started is with you telling us your backstory, how you got to this point,
Sure.
and what you're doing right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been working in the technology business for probably about 10 years now. We sort of previously made some technology to sort of connect people to buildings, an internal GPS system using Bluetooth. And the idea was that you could sort of locate people inside buildings, order services, things like that, and have them delivered to your location. We exited that business in 2015. And then, I was working on a sustainable sort of, a kind of like smart tech machine, which created different types of mineral waters on demand. And then the world got shut down, and I learned a strong lesson about, like black swan events coming out. And,
Right.
As a founder, you're like, there's absolutely no way that they're going to shut down the world. And then you're kind of like, hold on, we've got an out of home product. And so that was kind of a bit of swift ending. And then we started on Realm, looking at metaverse products and trying to sort of create a unique offering that solves some of the key problems that we saw.
Gotcha. I had to look back at your early career, Matt, and on LinkedIn, as I do
Yeah.
for anyone that I'm talking to on this show.
Yeah.
And you and I both started our careers at the same place. So you started with Fidelity.
Yeah, exactly.
So I started way back when, about 15 years before you did. But Fidelity International and Fidelity Investments,
Yeah.
obviously, as I learned through the years, two some completely different companies that, just under the same parent. But then, a few interesting things that you did before, like you said, with Unified App, once you got that up and running, and then leading that into Realm. Can you tell us what is Realm and where the idea came from and why you're doing this?
Yeah, so Realm is a metaverse that consists of lots of microverses, so small realms that people can create. And inside those realms, they can do everything from an event through to make a micro game, racing, something like that, open e-commerce stores, sell NFT assets, etc. And it's built as a mobile application with basically, we call it like a social metaverse. So there's a social app layer where, newsfeed, profiles, etc., similar to you would find in any kind of social app. And then when you dig deeper, you sort of tap on, say, certain items that would appear in the newsfeed that will sort of take you into the metaverse at that space. And the reason we sort of came up with it was, I think we thought what was going on with Decentraland and crypto voxels was cool, but it wasn't really, mainstream consumable experience. We started sort of doing a SWOT analysis on these metaverses, and then out the back of that, we were like, okay, so what do we want to design? And the three founders couldn't remotely sort of agree on anything. So we said, well, if we can't agree on what we would like to build, probably there's lots of people that have dreams about things that they want to build. So maybe the idea is actually just to augment that for them and give them sort of tools that simplify it. And then we just started working out how to sort of bring the barriers down to sort of get into the metaverse. So, not having to necessarily buy a piece of land for $1,000 up front. And then, it sort of spanned out more towards, we view it as a metaverse as a service platform.
And is it that individuals can go in and build their own microverses, or is it a developer platform, or is it both?
Individuals. We expect for people, the final product iteration should be something where, an individual can swipe through some templates, adjust a couple of colors in a similar way that they could, add a filter to Instagram. So they could either template things, or they can use a drag and drop tool, which is on the mobile or on PC. But yeah, no coding required, kind of more towards, a Wix or a Shopify end of web builders.
Okay. And can they then invite their friends into their own version of the metaverse?
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
And is it basically setting up games that they can play in their space?
Well, I think, you can't really pigeonhole the metaverse into, say, any particular genre. So it's everything from events through to actual economies that can occur inside these sort of games, selling items, things like this. So yeah, we've got a range of different things which we say, move from experiences through to kind of racing games, etc.
Okay. All right. And just thinking about Ready Player One, which I think you and I talked about before, and thinking about one of the visual moments of that, at least when reading the book, because I only ever watched half the movie because the movie didn't work for me. It was more the book, right? And where, what was it, Parzival and H were hanging out in H's chat room, which was H's basically, in the old school days, would have been an AOL, America Online, instant messenger chat room.
Yeah.
But this was actually a chat room where the two of them were wearing their VR goggles and wearing haptic gloves so they could high five each other, right? And hanging out and reading what were comic books that probably were NFTs, and a few other things going on there as well. And is this a reality, an augmented reality that you can actually introduce with Realm?
Yeah, so obviously being mobile focused, we were trying to sort of make the platform as accessible to as wide a number of people. And we'll talk about why we do that in the shortly. But yeah, it's sorry, could you repeat the question?
And it was kind of saying that if you imagine the future in the year 2045, where you can be waltzing around these, your buddy's chat room wearing VR goggles. Obviously, we're not doing that yet because we're not all wearing Oculus headsets.
So we can augment entire spaces, which we've done already, which you can walk inside and sort of navigate and interact with virtual pets, objects, things like that. That we've kind of already built and is sort of going into our public beta. We've sort of stayed clear of VR as it stands, just for the hardware limitations. But yeah, I mean, everything from, we've looked at minting like NFT, like magazines or newspapers and littering them around the metaverse and things like that. There's like all of those other like aspects of digital objects and digital media are kind of being undertaken, even as far as like education, sort of coming from crypto projects or, actual conventional corporations are looking to use the metaverse as a tool to sort of implement company docs, company processes, etc. Yeah, so like team building and things like this in escape rooms, like Edge Escape Rooms is one of the partners that we're working with, that creates education-based escape rooms for corporations. So it's kind of, the use cases are already quite abstract, and can go as granular as you like, really, like, a well-made game.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you guys set about to design this, what was the single most important thing for you to get right?
I think it was, what we were really thinking about was the overall experience that the user would have when they entered the metaverse. What we realized was bizarre was it felt quite lonely when we, in the early days in Decentraland and places like that. So it's a really large space and there wasn't really many people in there. So it felt like you were maybe walking around a ghost town and occasionally you would stumble into someone. So, getting an atmosphere which felt like it was alive was probably the foundation of how you would do that. And then obviously we started to think around how do you actually maybe make it, in your mind feel even more alive. And that's sort of bridging the gap between the physical and the digital. And obviously augmented reality is a good technology for that. And then doing some other things like mimicking actions that occur inside the game world in the real world.
How did you guys do that?
So we usually partner with digitally native companies that, say, for instance, like Plastic Bank, that has a token and an established system to take some fiat funds, distribute those into a community, and create some positive impact. And so start with finding the ones that are the most sort of digitally native. So you've got quick integration. Then what we did was we built economies around inside the game. So, players and characters require food. So we're like, hey, what can we do here? Say, for instance, if someone plants trees to grow food and there's a whole economy cycle there, how much money can we extract off of this to pay for the trees? So then we built the economies up with the sustainability sort of as the foundation of it.
Yeah. Did you ever, what was the name of that game? Second Life. Did you ever play Second Life?
A little bit, but yeah, some time ago.
Yeah, no, I never did. But I listened to a podcast where the founder was talking about the whole experience, and any crossover of ideas coming from some old school first time attempts at getting some of this right that might have fed into your vision for Realm?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I've been analyzing my mind quite a lot recently to look at this, because I find that either subconsciously or something, you do tend to arrive at these similar kind of outcomes that then if you look at media that you haven't even seen, you're like, oh, hold on, this is sort of depicted already previously.
Yeah.
I don't know really why or how that occurs. I do think though that, if you're the kind of person that's looked at the real world, and the metaverse is essentially a sandbox trying to create aspects of humanity, society, you're kind of thinking about better ways. Say we don't have these government rules and these taxes and these different things like this. It's like, if we've got a proper sandbox, what's the solution you come up with? And I tend to think that I've seen in most cases a lot of these metaverses coming towards these same kind of ideas. And that also has a bad side. So if we take, for instance, the way land is dealt with in most metaverses, we've really just recreated the same land system that we had before, where rich people can purchase lots of land. And, they took the risk with what might be a small amount of their capital. They end up with all the land and then they sell it for a large amount afterwards. Artificial scarcity there. So we sort of approached it on a dual land structure. There's a city where you can buy the land, and then there's realms which anyone can make. Essentially, we'll rank a realm which is popular just the same as if it had a land parcel, and we'll direct a lot of footfall there, which at least makes a clear route from someone who's maybe got no money and is in the Philippines, just on an Android phone, building some cool, fun game that lots of people play, and now they start to generate money out of the metaverse from a cluster of people who enjoy their creation.
That's cool. It's almost like thinking about the later stages of where Audius is going. I don't think they're completely there yet, but where the top artists get paid in audio for the most footfall on their music, which is basically listeners.
Yeah.
Right. So is that the same idea with Realm? Is that?
Yeah. So we have two models. We have a play to earn model, which is obviously, directed at the player. And then we have a build to earn model, which is sort of there to try and incentivize people to build on the platform. And both of those models basically distribute Realm tokens, ownership in the overall metaverse to the relevant people. And, then we just have to kind of manage the distribution between the two things like you would do in a normal marketplace, and try to make sure that you incentivize enough builders to have the network effects of lots of different realms and things for people to visit and find stuff that they personally enjoy. And I guess we do some slightly different things where we treat everybody equally and enable everybody to have the same opportunity here. So if you're in the Philippines or you're in, San Francisco in the United States, if you spend time inside Realm, you all get the same amount of Realm tokens back. So it's kind of like everyone's time is valued at the same cost.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. Okay. Really cool. I love it. Hey everyone, this is Pete. Let me tell you about the folks at Philip Lee. A few years ago, I was at my first venture capital industry dinner in Dublin, and honestly, I felt a bit lost. I bumped into Andrew Tizali, one of the partners at Philip Lee. He bought me a pint and introduced me to the team, and they took me under their wing. That take you under their wing approach has been what I've heard consistently from fintech and crypto startups who I know have worked with Philip Lee in Dublin and London to help them wrap the right legal framework around their business, fundraising, and regulatory needs. And I can't recommend them enough. Get in touch with the team at philiplee.ie or on moneyneversleeps.ie/Philip Lee to learn more. This has been, looking back at the first business that you founded, the Unified app, right?
Yeah.
Which you talked about at the beginning, that it's quite a difference between running that business and the day-to-day demands on the CEO of that kind of business versus the day-to-day demands on the CEO and founder of Realm, and two different types of businesses. Can you talk about how you made that transition?
I was always in crypto. I've been buying and selling crypto from like 2013, but it wasn't like my primary role. Otherwise, I just get hooked on the charts, and you end up over trading, and it goes wrong. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a case of, I think these businesses are completely different to Web2 businesses. I see some massive benefits. Access to capital is quick. Access to liquidity for investors and team members is possible at the end of the vesting period, which I think is a better deal and more attractive overall when you're hiring. Obviously, we've had fortunate that we were in this kind of position where metaverse was always quite a hot topic, and then it blew up obviously with the Meta announcement, and it's just highly creative, so it's quite an attractive kind of business to work on. The difficulties I found, though, is that you're trying to attract talent multiple different time zones. We pretty much got people all throughout Europe, Iran, Mexico, Philippines, Vietnam, and then your investors are all everywhere from Australia through China and places like that. So time-wise, it was kind of it's quite demanding, actually. And then I think once you launch a token, you have to sort of appreciate the fact that a large percentage of your time is going to be sort of monitoring marketing that's occurring, understanding sentiment in the community. There's always a new fire about someone complaining about something, or someone just something not quite working. They don't understand how to use their Trust wallet. So you've really got to ramp up much quicker than anything I've seen, but you do have the capital to do it. I just recommend hiring hiring people that maybe have done it before. Is you can find it with like the community mods and stuff, but you're really going to struggle with like people like Solidity devs, marketing people and Solidity devs. So the gold dust in this space. It's completely different, but I don't think I'd ever go back. Because if you effectively utilize the community, that you'll be able to grow quite quickly, because essentially they're happy to invest in potentially high return sort of assets. Then you can, rather than say a Web2 startup where you might spend 40% of your revenue on on advertising costs. Mm-hmm. You're a SaaS business or something like that. You're kind of actually looking to how you can organically sort of interact and engage the community to sort of do that marketing for you. And you can see, honestly, like crazy amounts of people turning into sort of groups, every day, gaining thousands of people into a group. And it's quite exciting. I definitely prefer it.
Yeah. I just big difference between going out and saying, all right, how much am I going to spend on Google ads or Twitter ads, this month in order to get more people to look at my SaaS, right? Versus going out and virtually building that community through just engaging and interacting with individuals that you think may want to use your product or build on it. Developers that want to build on it. It's just, much more enjoyable.
I think so, and it makes more sense because now the people that are invested are there trying to market your product. They're sort of introducing it to other people that, may also invest or may use the product. And ultimately, if people that other customers have ownership in the overall service, then probably means that they're less likely to churn in the end, unless there's something else comes out that's completely way better and can't sort of fit their solution or requirements.
Yeah, I was listening to Chris Dixon from A16Z on the Bankless podcast this morning, and this was an episode he recorded back in October with them. And what he was talking about AI, right, and saying that as AI gets better and better, we are at risk of centralizing that function even more, because the incumbents, the big tech companies, are going to get better and better at what they're doing, right, with their ad targeting, and that just brings all of that. When you think about that network, just concentrating so much of that in the center of the network. Blockchain, with what you're doing, moves everybody to the fringes, right? And moves that ownership out to the fringes, and presents a lot more of an opportunity, like you said, to generate value out of that that can be shared with the community and shared with the whole network. And it's a big difference between Web 2 and Web 3. And what I'm learning is that I do prefer Web 3. Where do you kind of see this going over the next couple of years with Web 3? If you guys are, with you guys expectingly going to be successful in this space?
Yeah, I mean, our product is actually really a bit of a hybrid, which it should be. Always the problem we've had with sort of crypto is UX, and it's just impossible to kind of use. And still it's a problem. Rarely you can sign transactions from inside a mobile app, for instance. There's pretty much only Trust Wallet and MetaMask that do that. So you're already like huge issues there. So we've kind of approached things from let's try and bring people in with a user password, or they could sign in with a wallet if they wanted to not do user password. And then we'll maybe try and bridge them later on into sort of the blockchain stuff. So they'll win coins and digital assets on a fiat side, and then they have the ability to then move those onto the blockchain, and essentially sort of, I guess, like have the full access to kind of custody over the asset, send it to OpenSea, do whatever they want, stake it, so on and so forth. We really see the value in the blockchain side of things. Obviously, like I say, moving value behind the scenes efficiently using smart contracts, paying royalties, things like this, obviously way better. Existing games are kind of put in time, put in money, get nothing out at the end of it. It's kind of like, if I stop playing after a year and I've spent £120 on different assets, there's nothing I can do with them. So clearly there's the model of sort of having NFTs or value transfer on the back on a digital ledger makes sense. I know that like most women that I talk to about what we're doing, they're like, hey, we still can't understand half this stuff. Like, what is this? Like, why do I have to do this? And it's all kind of, we really want to move away from that. I guess some of the newer chains, things like Near and stuff with like human readable name, like account names and stuff, that helps for sure. But still we're like stepping stones rather than kind of getting to like a Web 2 user experience, which is like effective Face ID, Touch ID, everything's secure. And there's some way that we can back things up in a more secure fashion. I think once that occurs, then people will be attracted by things like 10-20% stable yields on Anchor Protocol and things like this.
Yeah.
Can you move them into the system and then maybe bring Anchor Protocol into the metaverse, for instance, and you walk up to a bank and you just talk to your phone and it says, hey, like, what you want to deposit these things that you have, and it works like that. I think the metaverse can be a really interesting user interface layer, where you abstract away all of this blockchain stuff and you have some kind of mobile app or VR or whatever it is, and then you just interface with the thing, and maybe we use voice recognition, Face ID, or some biometrics to actually activate the transfer.
Yeah, it's connecting the dots on a couple of things. One was a further thought from that Bankless podcast episode, but also I forget who said it, but it was looking at the summer of NFTs compared to the summer of DeFi, that it's surprise, a lot more people are interested in culture than finance.
Yeah.
Right. And seeing where that's gone, and maybe that NFTs and that whole space and the ability to move your avatar, to move other digital assets from one environment to the next, and giving people the opportunity to do that is the bridge that gets the next 100 million users into crypto. And that of course, when they start earning tokens for what they're doing in the metaverse, that of course they are probably going to want to earn some yield on that saving, and that would perhaps bring people into DeFi, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's how we see it. And I'm hearing the same thing from investors. They've sort of plowed, I don't know, 7-8 figures into NFTs over the last quarter, and they're seeing mad action there. And sort of the DeFi side's kind of pretty flat.
Yeah.
All the money has gone to, like you say, cultural objects, or at least you have something artistic, I guess. It's kind of it's an expensive picture. But I think there's just nothing sexy about DeFi to your average user.
It's been a great run, right? And I think it's a primitive that's completely necessary for what we call emerging market societies in the cloud, right? It's that the UX needs to get better. And I've seen things like Zappify which is an overlay on top of MetaMask wallet, which gives you a better user experience on MetaMask when you're trading across different asset classes. So I think that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But it's a ways to go. And well, I mean, even on NFTs, it's like you could be, if you got to use that ETH to Polygon bridge, you may end up waiting for, a few hours to get that NFT into your wallet. Or my recent experience where it was a week before it even hit my wallet, right? So, but
the bridges are a problem, really. They always seem to get hacked. So that's a little bit worrying, to be honest. For this whole interoperable future, which is meant to be super relevant to the metaverse as a whole, that maybe, you can take your digital assets from one metaverse and walk into another metaverse. But it's like, how does that really occur if, you're down on Solana chain and, you want to get over to BSC or something like this? Like if bridges aren't really functioning, you have to maybe use a service like Moralis, where what we do is we scan all of the different blockchains, the same wallet addresses that you've connected to your account. And then we don't even care where the asset is. We just say that you definitely own this asset. And do we have any 3D files or sort of animations or interactions connected to the asset?
Yeah. I was listening to someone else say something to the effect of, but listen, why would I want to drive my Ferrari from Grand Theft Auto into Axie Infinity and kill all those little things?
I mean, I don't know, but sometimes, that is quite a weird one. And I'm not going to say that people should or should but I think, the idea of a diverse kind of set of characters and creatures, and vehicles and clothes and styles is, and sounds and everything we're looking for a fully 3D multimedia immersive sort of diverse experience. You want to go from Alice in Wonderland into some, realm where you're suddenly like, a sketch drawing, and it's kind of like, okay, wow, what is this? That's kind of, I think, the long view of where the metaverse would go.
Yeah, and it's that you put time into your players, right? I was talking to Laura Walsh from Gamify about this.
Yeah.
And it's like people want that mythology. People want the lore of the player that you build up, and that's meaningful to you, and you want to be able to take it to the next game rather than just, hey, let's go somewhere and create one and then, use it all over the place. It's that you need that mythology from one game that's created by the story and the narrative of that game, and be able to then bring it with you as you go,
Exactly.
Cool. Now, a couple of minutes ago, Matt, you talked about access to capital, and I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on how you went about putting together your seed round for this. And, when you thought about pulling together the investor base, what was important to you with how that investor base came together?
So obviously just the basics. We just made a really nice deck. We had some prototypes built out that we were sort of looking at, and we were kind of thinking, obviously you want a range of different funds from different geographies, some Chinese funds, obviously there's a massive market there, US, European, and so on. Then we went to some founders. So we've got a bunch of different founders who've sort of invested, and they're really useful because they give you a completely different perspective. And I think it's quite good to have that balanced viewpoint. Sometimes from an investor, it's kind of, they're coming from one direction and see something slightly differently. But from the founder, they're kind of thinking about what's occurring operationally inside the business. And they're like, hey, don't run into these pitfalls. So we just took a blend like that. And then, in the space we were in, obviously, and at the time when we were raising, it was extremely bullish. I think we sort of closed our round. It was like April, May before. I think on my birthday was when the market completely sort of collapsed on May.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Matt.
I was like, I'm glad we closed this last month. But it was just a case of sort of figuring out who were the best people. We spoke to maybe like 50, 60 different types of investors. We turned down, 3 times the money that we took. And we really didn't want to. We had a good understanding of what we could build at what rate, and we didn't necessarily want to take too much capital and, find that there was a large amount out there sort of in the market with investors who may potentially want to sell them, in line at the wrong time for us, and at the wrong time for the community. I think we raised about $3 million in total, and it was a fairly quick process, to be honest, a lot quicker than Web 2. You look at 3, 6, 12 months sometimes.
Oh, big time. I've told this story so many times that where I'm noticing now with all of these projects that I'm talking to, that if they launched before October of 2021, it's too late because they've already moved so fast. They've pulled together a seed round perhaps. And once you raise a few million, coming into an accelerator program is a different proposition than it was before you raised the 3 million, right? But if they did happen to launch before October, August, going way back in crypto years, right? That where it does make sense is if they've been building up a Web 2 model and had then realized, wait a second, before we actually get this to market and start scaling it and build it, this actually has a much better fit for Web 3 with where the world is going.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily a pivot because they haven't changed their product all that much. It's just on the baseline, how they deliver the value proposition, right? And that they are, looking at us and need some help. And I guess it just takes, the more and more you see in this space, the more repetitions you have, the better picture and the better clarity of the picture on where you think this is all going, right?
Mm.
Looking at how you put together, like I said, putting together the seed round, getting that investor base together in advance of the private sale. How have things gone since the IDO that you did back in September overall? What do you think?
Things have gone fairly well. So I think investors invested at basically 3 cents a token, somewhere around 35 cents now. It did go all the way up to 240.
I saw that.
Quite a lot of people. Yeah. So that's obviously pretty successful. We focused on products. Like we're more interested about getting to the finishing line or the starting line, should we say, which is when you can actually release product, and then getting into those feedback loops. And also the thing is, marketing in crypto is not the same as marketing in, over in Web 2 or any conventional marketing agency.
Yeah.
The costings are through the roof. I found it's just not necessarily as professional, and it's very expensive. So it's a case of like, okay, at what point do you really want to like pile on a lot of marketing dollars? And it's kind of like, okay, there's this ramp up to sort of product launch, and there's a bunch of stuff that happens in the sort of couple of months before that. And then it's kind of like, let's use the sort of marketing dollars afterwards to ensure that we're getting people building and playing the game, and driving that. We started on the builders and the players already. But yeah, it's a very reactive space. And actually as well, like if I think we have about 8 people full time, so 24/7 in the communities across Discord and Telegram and things like that. And you really do need to sort of manage public perception like heavily. Consistency is one thing that I would say is fundamental. So if you can consistently release content on the same day as regular content, which really updates across like the different pillars of the business, be it what's happening behind the scenes with the developers through to, what's happening on the partnership front and so on and so forth, that will sort of aid with the overall marketing perception, I think.
Okay. Yeah. It's mind-boggling in going through as many Discords as I have to just check them out and use that to say, okay, how is this project building out their community? And seeing those with, tons of people online and how well that those communities are managed and enabling people to level up and earn rewards and just really incentivize them to get engaged before they even start using the product.
Yeah.
And is there an element of that perfecting the, early stage user incentivization on Discord that you then do carry over into your product? Is there a relationship there? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, from the start, you're kind of trying to you have to manage the expectation though as well, because if you hype it too much and there's like, let's say 6 months till the actual product release, you're really just kicking the can down the road, and it's like quite difficult to maintain that level of push. And then the problem is what I understand from sort of the charts and the psychology is kind of, say you have this big spike, and then a bunch of people come in, and then they obviously buy near the top. And then what you have is you have all these people who really just maybe made a slightly emotional trade, a FOMO type trade. And now you've polluted potentially your community with a bunch of people who made quite long trades, but were looking for a quick exit. And obviously, when you can't necessarily stabilize that by, say, having use case for your token, which it will be consumed when people use the product, which is going to drive price action. You can find yourself in a tricky scenario. I definitely think that we've had that issue. To go from like 3 cents IDO up to maybe like 80 cents, back down around sort of like 50, and then pump up to sort of 250, 240 or something like that. And then sort of come right back down, and then the whole market destroys itself. And obviously fairly small tokens are going to get hit quite hard. But then again, I say that we haven't necessarily lost a lot of holder numbers. What they've done is they've just reduced their bag size.
Yeah, I hear you. And I did see a video probably about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, of a number of different type of game tokens that had not yet hit full steam, or at least the person who did the video, it was their representation that hadn't yet hit full steam, and Realm were one of them. And was there a scaled increase in the price after that video came out? Do those types of things impact the price? They
definitely do. We do track that. So obviously, with the larger the channel, the bigger the impact. Mm-hmm. That's definitely a thing. Your KOL strategy is pretty big. That's the problem as well. So the major difference is that, Web 2 business should spend all your time writing pitch decks and imaginary models for VCs. Web 3, you're there going, how do we hire people? How do we better communicate between the marketing team, which consists of, KOLs that may be invested at a seed level, who are massive, through to micro KOLs, through to KOLs of gaming things, through to Twitch streamers, and all these different aspects. And it's you have so much capital to deploy, and you want to obviously get the analytics in and then understand whether or not it's effective quickly. So it's really just a case of finding excellent people that can put those systems in as quickly as possible. We have a full back-end custom-built analytics dashboard that scans every chain that our token's on. We have a list of addresses for every type of KOL, pre-sale or investor. Basically, we stratify wallets by certain sizes and run all sorts of like blockchain analysis on that. And then we're going to take that data and use it elsewhere inside the actual product. So take all the information, use APIs on Etherscan, etc., run it into Google Data Studio. And then, we're going as far as sort of making sure it's our play to earn and build to earn faucet essentially attached to that data and not impacting the price in a negative way.
Absolutely. And because my mom listens to this podcast and she asked us to clarify all acronyms, can you please let our audience know what a KOL is?
Key opinion leader. Yeah, I know. We'll call them influencers.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a professional term.
That's great. And taking a step back and looking at the broader space, right? That, if you had one thing that you would absolutely point to and say, this is a trait of someone who's completely ready for Web3 and ready to knock the ball out of the park in Web3, what would that trait be?
You mean from a founder's perspective?
From a founder's perspective, yeah.
Yeah. I think that people that understand user experience and user interface obviously can win. I mean, it's the lowest lying fruit in this kind of space. If there's anything you can do to optimize that, you win. And I also think that two problems that we've noticed is it's rather different working. I've never met anybody here who works at Realm. There's like 70 people. I think I know 3 people. Obviously, I know them all, but like I've only met 3 of them in real life. So managing this thing can be quite demanding. So if somebody has experience from a Web 2 kind of startup business and understands like operations and how to get things in place and also maybe to manage culture there, then I think they're going to really excel.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because, in this space before NFTs open things up to be more about media, art, gaming, that, DeFi was there, crypto being the basic payments infrastructure before DeFi came along. And the sought after skill set was, do you have experience in traditional finance? right? And saying that, can you then bring that into crypto? And now it's, okay, look at Web 2 on a broader basis, not just traditional finance, but Web 2, and say, did you excel in that? And can you then transplant that into Web 3? That's an interesting thought.
Because the singular skill set that the person needs to really have is like, how do we deploy the capital to accelerate growth? Because there's no like games being played. Everyone gets given a massive bag of money at the beginning, and it's like, okay, now we've got to grow this thing at the same rate. You know, most of the metaverse companies are pulling at least 30 engineers now, probably teams of 50, 70 people. And, you know, I know some which are trying to push to 180 engineers by the end of this year. So it's like, you know, the growth just in the engineering department's massive. And actually to scale that, you need experience in the actual back-end operations. Like, how are we managing this many people? They're on different time zones. You're starting to try and find people, skill sets, say for engineers, which are quite rare. Like, you know, try and find a Solidity dev nowadays is like, the chances in you finding anyone decent on, you know, a normal job site, no chance. You need to go to specialist headhunters who go and poach them from places, or kind of, you know the individuals, and sort of they sort of reach out to them and say that they're looking for new jobs. So all of that, it's like, you need to be very organized, and you need to be able to deploy the capital in as fast way as possible, and then just track the analytics on it. You know, how's it performing? It's all we've really done. And ultimately, you know, we're lucky that we started with a strong core of individuals, some of the guys from Cambridge University, doctors in maths, places like, you know, people of a decent academic quality and experience. And then they come in and then they help their network. And then, you know, once you've got a strong core, you can sort of attract better people, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I hear you. We're going to move to the final question, Matt. You ready for this?
Sure.
All right. And we like to ask this to everybody. We get sometimes some crazy answers, sometimes some less than crazy answers. But tell us, what would be one thing that people would not expect to know about Matthew Larby?
I don't know. I suppose in my previous life, when I was like a young kid, I used to windsurf for Great Britain. I was like second in the world when I was 15. And I didn't really go to school for Thursdays and Mondays.
Really?
Yeah, quite frequently. I'd just go to like competitions down in Europe and places like this. And my school was all the way up in the north of England. So yeah, I usually leave on maybe Thursday nights sometimes and drive over to Europe in a motorhome. And then, yeah, spend the weekend windsurfing or on the beach, and then go back to school on Tuesday.
Wow. What was the coolest place where you won a windsurfing competition?
I don't know. I've won quite a few, but everything in Europe, I guess, like places like Italy, like Lake Garda, things like that. Lake Garda is a beautiful place if you've never been.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, absolutely.
It's an incredible place, although the water's absolutely freezing. But yeah, Italy as a whole, you know, you can't really go wrong. Great food, and yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I'd pretty much say that.
All right. Well, shout out to Lake Garda. Funny story. One thing people wouldn't expect to know about me: the single time I was in Lake Garda. We left Lake Garda, my wife and I, after the wedding that we were at. We drove across to, where is it that Romeo and Juliet took place? Verona.
Yeah.
Verona. And we went for lunch, looking at the menu. It's an Italian. I recognized something, and I wasn't sure what it was. And it was the description of the pasta. It was bigoli, right? And which is big, fat spaghetti, right? And so I had that, and it was called... Bigoli d'Asino. And I didn't know what that was, but it came over looking something like spaghetti bolognese. So I ate it. And afterwards, I Googled it. I spelled d'Asino wrong. It was Dasimo, which is a robot generated or built by Honda. Yeah. And then I actually got D'(ASINO), which is donkey. And I'm like, I just ate donkey bolognese. Never again. That was like before you had access to like Google Translate at the tip of your fingers. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, better you winning windsurfing competitions in Lake Garda than me eating donkey. But, you know, we'll leave it at that.
Remember that word.
Yeah. Listen, Matt, this was an awesome chat. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And really looking forward to seeing you guys knock the ball out of the park, right?
Cool. Brilliant. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Matt. That does it for this week, folks. Thanks to Matthew Larby for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. Links to get in touch with Matt and learn more about Realm are in the show notes on our website, moneyneversleeps.ie. So check us out online and subscribe to our Money Never Sleeps newsletter as well. Also, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I'm an early stage startup investor and advisor focused on where fintech meets crypto and crypto meets Web3. If you'd like to talk to me about your business, drop me a line on info@moneyneversleeps.ie. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!
Money never sleeps, pal.